In the echoing halls of 19th century literature, Fyodor Dostoyevsky walks alone, both of his time and ahead of it. His novels, while clothed in the familiar garments of the Russian realist tradition, carry within them a feverish energy that refuses containment. They whisper of madness, of fractured identities, of men who tremble not just from the cold of St. Petersburg, but from the unbearable weight of existence itself. Though a fierce defender of Slavic ideals, Dostoevsky never turned away from the brokenness of his world. On the contrary, he plunged headfirst into it, his narratives shaped by the political storms and spiritual decay of his homeland. And yet, the lives he wrote were never only Russian. They were universal. Strangers adrift in the crowd, haunted by the other within, grappling with God, guilt, and the gnawing sense of being out of place. Long before modernism had a name, Dostoevsky was sketching its silhouette. His characters, a bureaucrat muttering to himself in a damp apartment, a murderer trembling under the gaze of divine judgment, a man at war with his own shadow, are prophets of a coming century's loneliness. In their pain, he found a new kind of storytelling, one that pierced the surface, dug into the mind, and stayed there. His work burns with the intensity of a man who knew suffering firsthand. From exile to epilepsy, from debt to despair, Dostoevsky turned every wound into a window. And through those windows we see not only Russia, but ourselves. Set in the cold, oppressive shadows of 19th century St. Petersburg, Dostoevsky's The Double offers a chilling descent into the mind of a man undone by his own reflection. Its protagonist, Mr. Golyadkin, is a man of modest means, a servant, a respectable address, a government post. And yet beneath his fragile composure, a silent terror festers, nameless but ever present. On a bleak and rain-soaked night, after being humiliatingly ejected from a high society gathering he was never invited to, but so desperately wished to belong to, Golyadkin wanders the slick streets of Petersburg in despair. It is there, in that liminal space between rejection and madness, that he meets himself. Or rather, the other. A man identical in face, but opposite in nature. What follows is not merely a tale of mistaken identity, but a psychological storm. The dialectic of Big Golyadkin and Little Golyadkin begins to churn with a fevered intensity. But this is no internal conflict alone. It is social, existential. The new Golyadkin, who soon replaces the original in work and society, is everything the first is not: charismatic, compliant, sociable, and disturbingly adaptable. He is not the repressed part of the self, as many might assume. He is the manifestation of a persona demanded by society. A role Golyadkin cannot play, though he tries. The Double forces us to ask, what happens when the version of ourselves that society prefers comes to life? For Golyadkin, the answer is annihilation. The other is not a ghost from the past, nor a figment of guilt. It is society's ideal, creeping in to replace the flawed, trembling human. In crafting this Hall of Mirrors narrative, Dostoevsky does not simply explore identity, he dismantles it. In 19th century Russia, a society ruled by a powerful aristocracy, Yakov Petrovich Golyadkin finds himself unfulfilled by the social position his class affords him. Within this rigidly hierarchical order, where the upper class, composed largely of aristocrats, sets the rules, Golyadkin is condemned to live on the fringes. The symbolic order of this society permits room only for the little Golyadkin, underpaid, living as a lodger in another man's home, surviving rather than living. But this role does not satisfy him. Longing for dignity and acceptance, Golyadkin conjures an upper-class identity, a grander self, and attempts to inhabit this fabricated persona as though it were his true self. In doing so, he defies the symbolic order, the societal structure that defines identity through the gaze of the social other. He dares to wear a mask not sanctioned by society, and for that, he is punished. The elite, who uphold the laws of the social game, do not recognize the mask he insists on wearing. Instead of being elevated, he is rejected. He is cast out not for who he is, but for who he tries to become. This echoes the existential unease explored by Jean-Paul Sartre. In his philosophy, the other represents an alien gaze that distorts our sense of self, robbing us of our autonomy. As Sartre puts it, the moment the other enters the stage, our entire inner architecture begins to collapse. The other steals my existence, he claims. We build our own world, shaped by our perceptions, until the other arrives and redefines our identity through their gaze. From that moment on, our being becomes determined not by self-understanding, but by the judgment of someone else. Golyadkin's tragedy is thus not merely psychological, but philosophical. He is a man undone by the need to belong to a world that will never let him in. Golyadkin, succumbing to the neurosis of the other, creates a doppelganger, a figure identical in appearance, yet endowed with all the virtues he lacks. Throughout the story, the battle between the two Golyadkins is more than a surreal encounter between lookalikes. It is the relentless internal conflict between the ego and the superego, fought on the fragmented battlefield of a shattered psyche. What begins as a psychological narrative, rich in paranoia and hallucination, gradually unfolds into something deeper, a philosophical and socio-political exploration of identity in Tsarist Russia. Long before psychiatry gave a name to paranoid schizophrenia, Dostoevsky was already mapping its terrain through the haunted streets of Petersburg and the haunted mind of his protagonist. But this is not merely a clinical case study in madness. The novel mirrors a society in which the individual is caught in a tug-of-war between the self, society, and the state. Beneath Golyadkin's descent lies a broader crisis, the individual's alienation within a bureaucratic, class-bound system that denies him space to exist authentically. His mental collapse reflects the impossible demand to conform to an ideal that society both enforces and withholds. In this sense, The Double is not only a psychological portrait, but also a biting social commentary, an unsettling window into how identity disintegrates when it is forced to wear a mask for too long. The issue of otherness, deeply intertwined with the very essence of human existence and shrouded in psychological mystery, has captivated countless writers throughout history. Among those who explored this theme with unrelenting intensity stands Dostoevsky, a pillar of world literature and a master of psychological and philosophical fiction. From the very beginning of his creative journey to its end, Dostoevsky placed the question of otherness at the heart of his work, his novella. The Double stands as the earliest and perhaps the most explicit literary treatment of this theme within his oeuvre. The protagonist, Golyadkin, becomes a recurring figure throughout Dostoevsky's literary world, resurfacing in various forms and disguises across different works, sometimes as mythic, sometimes as poetic, and often as a psychological manifestation of the other self. This duplicity serves not only as a narrative device, but as a profound existential inquiry into identity, alienation, and the fractured self. One of the most potent and enduring qualities of Dostoevsky's art is this very theme of otherness, or the other self. Through it, he captures the essence of Russian life and culture, as well as a broader human condition. Though he is often categorized within realism, Dostoevsky's artistic vision bears deep traces of romanticism, and the tension between romantic illusion and narrative truth becomes a defining feature of his storytelling. His works reveal the unresolved clash between what Albert Camus later called romantic lies and novelistic truth, a philosophical and emotional tug-of-war that plays out through the struggles of his characters. In this sense, the theme of otherness in Dostoevsky is not merely a psychological curiosity, but a dramatic and philosophical battleground where illusion and reality wrestle, often with tragic consequences. His unique blend of romantic spirit and philosophical depth allows him to turn personal alienation into a universal struggle, one that continues to resonate long after the final page is turned. The theme of othering first emerges as a profound idea in Dostoevsky's The Double, and reaches its full form in The Brothers Karamazov. The issue of othering and the other self, introduced in the early years of Dostoevsky's artistic journey, aims to unravel the mystery of the human condition. Specifically, one of the foundational questions in literature, the dilemma of identity and selfhood. The expansion of human culture, along with shifting aesthetic criteria and values, has led the problem of othering to take on a deeply complex, multifaceted form. Young Golyadkin, the prototype of the other self-type characters in Dostoevsky's art, emerges as the first example of fragmented souls, desperate to find and recreate their identity. This issue reappears in The Possessed, The Adolescent, and even, albeit indirectly, in Crime and Punishment with Raskolnikov. In The Double, Dostoevsky offers one of the clearest examples of constructing a person's world from within, a technique that Kafka would later explore in his own dark, cerebral works. The road of freedom has led man to the path of evil. Through evil, it tears him apart. Dostoevsky is a master in the depiction of this fragmentation. His true discovery, one that would later deeply influence both psychologists and psychiatrists, is born here. The great artist discovered far more much earlier than the so-called experts. Boundless and empty freedom, untethered, unanchored. This is a freedom without meaning, a freedom that, rather than leading to liberation, plunges into an abyss. Thus man is divided, two selves are born, and personality fractures into pieces. Dostoevsky's characters, Raskolnikov, Stavrogin, Versilov, Ivan Karamazov, are all shattered, broken people. They lose the integrity of their souls, wandering through a double existence. On the verge of this division, a person's other self, the inner darkness, emerges as a devil, taking on a life of its own. In this light, it could be said that the double is the key to understanding all of Dostoevsky's works. The other is a devil, tormenting Mr. Golyadkin for no reason other than to do so. His very own reflection, his doppelganger, his shadow. Sartre, in his Existential Despair, would encapsulate this with the sharpest clarity. Hell is other people. Hell exists within the human mind, within the self, as a judge, a master, a servant, an entire society imprisoned in the form of twins, doppelgangers, and copies. Others, in a very real sense, are the hell we must face. The existential struggle lies in mastering them, in asserting dominion over them. Only then can the self hope to achieve some semblance of unity. Otherwise, anxiety, dread, and the suffocating grip of fear will claim dominion over the soul. We may conclude with a sobering reflection from Sigmund Freud. The price of civilization is neurosis. Dostoevsky's works are not merely reflections of a time or a society, but a profound exploration of the human soul's darkest, most conflicted corners. His characters, Golyadkin's doppelganger, Raskolnikov's guilty conscience, Stavrogin's inner void, reflect not just the Russia of his era, but the universal feelings of alienation, existential anxiety, and the search for identity that all humans grapple with, regardless of time or place. His definition of the other is not a simple psychological disorder or a social problem. It is a shadowy, uncontrollable force within us, an abstract entity that remains unresolved, pushing us to constantly ask deeper questions. Who am I? Where do I belong? For whom do I exist? How far must I go to find my true self? The answers Dostoevsky offers are not just literary, they carry philosophical depth. The themes we've discussed in this video are more than just elements of fiction. They are the building blocks of individual and societal existence, the fundamental questions of the human experience. To read Dostoevsky is to embark on a journey far beyond the pages of his books. It's a journey into the labyrinth of the human soul. As we conclude, let's remember that Dostoevsky's exploration of the other offers us much more than just a mirror. It provides us with a window into the struggles of our own identity and the path toward self-realization. Can we truly achieve peace and understanding without confronting the other within ourselves? This is a responsibility for every reader who engages with his work.